Christmas morning had always been my favorite day of the year. Even as an adult, I still woke up with that childlike hope that today, just today, everything would feel warm and whole. The house smelled of cinnamon and coffee, the tree lights blinked softly in the corner, and for a moment, I let myself believe this Christmas would be different. I stood in front of the mirror before coming downstairs, one hand resting on my stomach, my heart racing with a joy so fragile it scared me. I was pregnant. The words felt unreal even inside my own head. I had practiced saying them quietly, over and over, imagining smiles, tears, maybe even my father's proud laugh. I told myself that a new life had a way of softening old hearts. I believed that this baby might finally make my family see me not as a disappointment, but as someone worth protecting. We gathered around the table, plates filled with eggs and toast, the sound of cutlery clinking against porcelain. My father sat at the head, loud and commanding as always, telling the same old stories. My hand shook as I cleared my throat. The room fell quiet. "I have something to tell you," I said, my voice barely steady. "I'm pregnant." For one heartbeat, there was silence. I waited for joy. Instead, my father's chair scraped violently against the floor. He stood up so fast his plate flew from his hands, crashing against the wall and shattering into pieces. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. My body froze. My baby kicked softly inside me, as if sensing danger. "You're trying to trap a man with a bastard child," he screamed, his face twisted with rage. "Just like your mother did to me." The words slammed into me harder than the broken plate. I felt my chest cave in, my ears ringing, my vision blurring. I looked around the table, searching for someone, anyone, to defend me. My mother stared at her hands. My siblings avoided my eyes. No one spoke. I wanted to disappear. My father kept yelling, his voice filling the room, tearing apart not just my dignity, but my past. He dragged my mother's pain into the open, using it as a weapon against me, as if my body and my child were nothing more than proof of his bitterness. I felt shame crawl over my skin, even though I had done nothing wrong. I whispered, "I just wanted to share something happy." But happiness had no place at that table. I stood up slowly, my legs weak, my hands protecting my stomach without even thinking. No one stopped me as I walked away. Not a single person followed. Upstairs, I locked myself in my room and slid down against the door, sobbing into my knees. I cried for the child growing inside me. I cried for the girl I had once been, the one who still believed her father could love her. That Christmas morning taught me a painful truth: sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who break you the most. And as I lay there, shaking and heartbroken, I didn't yet know that this was only the beginning of a loss that would change my life forever. The house felt different after that Christmas morning. The warmth was gone, replaced by a silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. No one apologized. No one checked on me. We moved around each other like strangers, careful not to acknowledge the damage that had been done. My father acted as if nothing had happened, as if his words hadn't shattered something fragile inside me. But my body remembered. Every sound made me flinch. Every raised voice, even from the television, sent a rush of fear through my veins. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying his words again and again. "A bastard child. Just like your mother." They echoed in my head until I couldn't tell where his voice ended and my own thoughts began. I pressed my hands to my stomach constantly, whispering apologies to my baby, promising protection I wasn't sure I could give. The stress settled into my bones. I couldn't eat. I couldn't breathe deeply. My chest felt tight, as if grief had wrapped itself around my lungs. I tried to tell myself the baby was strong, that love would be enough. But love doesn't erase cruelty, and it doesn't undo trauma. On the third day, the pain started. At first, it was just a dull ache, easy to dismiss. I told myself I was imagining it, that fear was playing tricks on me. Then the ache sharpened, spreading through my lower back and stomach. Panic took hold. My hands shook as I called for help, my voice small and broken. The ride to the hospital felt endless, every bump in the road a reminder of how powerless I was. The hospital room was cold and bright, the kind of brightness that makes sadness feel even lonelier. Doctors spoke gently, their voices careful, rehearsed. I watched their faces instead of listening to the words, already knowing what they were going to say. When they finally told me, it felt like the world tilted sideways. I had lost my baby. There were no screams. No dramatic collapse. Just a quiet, hollow ache that spread through my body until I felt empty. I stared at the ceiling while tears slipped silently into my hair. I mourned a life I never got to hold, a future that disappeared before it had a chance to begin. No one prepares you for how deep grief can go when it's mixed with guilt, even when you know the loss wasn't your fault. I stayed in that hospital room feeling invisible. Family members came and went, offering awkward sympathy, avoiding the real cause of my pain. No one said my father's name. No one acknowledged that stress can kill hope just as surely as any illness. I realized then how alone I truly was. That night, I placed a hand over my now empty stomach and whispered goodbye. I promised my baby that I would survive, that I would not let cruelty be the final chapter of our story. I didn't know how yet, but something inside me hardened into resolve. I left the hospital 3 days later weaker in body, but awake in a way I had never been before. The girl who believed silence was safety was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned, through unbearable loss, that survival sometimes begins the moment everything falls apart. The day I was discharged from the hospital, my body felt fragile, like glass held together by habit instead of strength. Every step sent a dull reminder through me, of pain, of absence, of what I had lost. I clutched my discharge papers in one hand and my coat in the other, bracing myself for the cold air outside. I thought I was ready to leave that place behind. I wasn't ready for what waited at the door. My father stood there, just beyond the sliding glass entrance, holding a bouquet of white flowers. Lilies. My mother's favorite. The sight of him stopped me in my tracks. For a split second, my chest tightened with something dangerous, hope. He looked smaller somehow, less commanding, his shoulders slumped, his face carefully arranged into something soft. "There you are," he said quietly, stepping forward. "I've been waiting." I said nothing. My body reacted before my heart could. Every muscle went rigid, every instinct screaming that this moment wasn't safe. "I'm sorry," he continued, holding out the flowers. "I didn't mean what I said. I was angry. I was scared. You know how I get." The words felt rehearsed, like a speech practiced in front of a mirror. He talked about stress, about misunderstandings, about how Christmas had been too much for everyone. He never once said the words "I hurt you." He never said my baby's name, because to him, my loss was an inconvenience, not a tragedy. I stared at the flowers. They were beautiful. Pristine. Untouched. Just like the apology he was offering, something pretty meant to cover the damage underneath. "You shouldn't hold on to anger," he said gently, lowering his voice. "It's not good for you. For your future." Something shifted inside me then. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet click, like a door finally closing. I realized his apology wasn't about me. It was about easing his conscience. About restoring his image as a good father. About making sure I didn't tell anyone the truth. The flowers weren't love, they were control, wrapped in petals. "I lost my baby," I said finally, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. "And you were the last person I needed to see." His face tightened for just a moment before smoothing over again. "That's not fair," he said. "You can't blame me for everything." That was all I needed to hear. I stepped back, refusing the flowers. "I'm not blaming you for everything," I said. "Just for what you did." For the first time in my life, I didn't wait for his approval. I didn't soften my words to protect his feelings. I didn't apologize for my pain. I walked past him, out into the cold air, my hands shaking but my spine straight. Behind me, I heard him call my name. I didn't turn around. That moment, the hospital door sliding shut behind me, was when I understood something powerful. Closure doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from clarity. From seeing someone exactly as they are, without excuses or hope blurring the truth. I got into the car alone. As the engine started, I let myself cry, not because I was weak, but because I was finally free from expecting love where there was none. The flowers remained on the pavement, bright and useless, while I drove away carrying something far more real, the beginning of my strength. Walking away from the hospital that day didn't magically heal me. Healing was slow, uneven, and often painful. Some mornings I woke up reaching for a stomach that was no longer round with promise. Some nights I cried so quietly I surprised myself with how much grief a person could carry without breaking apart. But something fundamental had changed. I no longer measured my worth by my father's approval or my family's silence. I moved out within a month. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no confrontations. I packed my things carefully, folding my clothes as if I were folding up an old version of myself. My father didn't stop me. He didn't apologize again either. That told me everything I needed to know. I left a short note behind, not angry, not accusing. Just honest. I need space to heal. Please don't contact me. For the first time in my life, I chose myself without guilt. I found a small apartment with creaky floors and too much light in the mornings. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. In that space, I let myself grieve properly. I lit a candle for the baby I lost and spoke out loud to the silence, honoring a life that mattered even if no one else acknowledged it. I went to therapy. I learned that love should never come with humiliation attached. I learned that being someone's daughter did not mean being their emotional punching bag. Months passed. Then years. I grew stronger in ways my father would never understand. I built a career he couldn't take credit for. I formed friendships that felt safer than family ever had. I laughed again, not the polite kind, but the deep, surprised laughter that comes from genuine joy. I stopped flinching at raised voices. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. News traveled, as it always does. My father heard about my success through relatives, through whispers he wasn't part of. He tried to reach out again, messages filled with pride, with "I always believed in you," rewritten history that excluded his cruelty. This time, I didn't respond at all. Silence, I learned, can be a boundary, not a weakness. That was my revenge. Not shouting. Not humiliation. Not public confrontation. My revenge was living so fully, so peacefully, that his opinion no longer mattered. My revenge was refusing to let him rewrite the story of my pain. My revenge was becoming a woman who didn't need his permission to exist, to love, or to heal. One evening, years later, I stood by my window watching the city lights glow. I placed a hand over my heart and thought of the child I lost, not with despair, but with tenderness. That loss shaped me, but it did not define me. If anything, it taught me the power of choosing myself when the world tries to break you. I didn't win by hurting him back. I won by surviving, by growing, and by loving myself enough to walk away from those who never deserved access to my life. And that, I realized, is the sweetest revenge of all.